Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm bringing you part 3 of my running back rankings. We're going to be touching on RBs 13 through 18. This is the second to last part. The conclusion will be 19 to 24. Anything after that, I'll just kind of write up or talk about and do weekly rankings. But for my overall rankings, I think we only really need to go to 24. Outside of that, it kind of gets a bit murky, but I will talk about them when I need to. So we're just going to kick off the list straight away with my RB13, Antonio Gibson, who was one of the weirder prospects we've seen coming out in a while. He only totaled 44 receptions and 33 carries coming out of Memphis, who, on a side note, has become one of the weirder candidates for an RBU, with him, Darrell Henderson, and Tony Pollard kind of making up the three-headed trio of kind of weird guys who are all kind of good. I mean, only really Antonio Gibson, but the other two tried their best. He was an absolute physical freak coming out of college, and that led to him getting a shot in, I believe, the second or third round, before finishing as the RB12 overall this past year and the RB17 in points per game. It's hard to try and pull up a comparison to Antonio Gibson because he is so unique, but there is a massive potential for a workload and play style comparison. That is Christian McCaffrey, DCMC, DCCMC, whatever you want to call him. That is the comp, but we won't get there just yet. Gibson overall had kind of low usage last year. His snap share was pretty low, and he played through a turf toe injury while also losing a few games to that. I think it hampered him in his last 5 or 6, and he missed probably some games in that span too, so he wasn't completely healthy for all of last year. Still turned in an RB1 level performance. Where it gets exciting is that through 5 games, Ron Rivera said that 70 touches wasn't really a lot for him, and that the workload could definitely be ramped up. After saying that, Gibson had games of 17, 17, 25, 13, and 20 touches in his next 5 full games, so 92, or about a 4.5 touch per game increase. Rivera wanted it, he spoke it into existence, and Gibson could very clearly handle the workload. One issue people might have with him was J.D. McKissic, who was an incredibly annoying target hog, him and Logan Thomas. But I think one of the main reasons we saw McKissic get so much targets and slot usage, he was, I believe, the only running back who had a slot lineup percentage of over 30%. It was absolutely nuts. It's because their quarterback was Alex Smith. And as happy as I was to see Alex Smith back in action, actually being able to play football again, the dude could not push the ball downfield. He was already kind of limited before the injury and all the complications, but it really just got worse from there. Moving back to that CMC comparison, this is where Gibson's upside becomes tantalizing and almost intoxicating if you buy it enough. Ron Rivera heralded his abilities as a dual threat player who can do it all through the air and on the ground, and he saw firsthand as the head coach of the Carolina Panthers what a player like CMC could do. That type of potential is destructive, and you can run an offense through it. He wants to unleash Antonio Gibson upon defenses, and while I'm not saying Gibson is the next CMC, there is an opportunity that he can put up very elite production if given that type of workload. His turf toe lingering, though, is a worry for me, and there's a chance it flares up. But the allure of a 300-touch player who gets so much work through the air as well as on the ground and has the build of a true 3-down back, it's kind of ridiculous. Add in the quality surrounding cast with an upgrade at quarterback, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, they brought in Diami Brown and Adam Humphries. They've improved the offensive line. The coaching staff is good as ever. And I think there's a very good chance for Antonio Gibson to take a big step forward this year. He's right on the cusp of an RB2/RB1 for me at RB13. And I'm definitely buying into his potential as a guy who can certainly outperform this rating given he stays healthy. Continuing the youth movement from last part, we had DeAndre Swift, then Najee Harris, then Antonio Gibson. And here at my RB14, we have J.K. Dobbins, the standout running back from the Baltimore Ravens. After being drafted in the second round, there were pretty high expectations for J.K. Dobbins, and for a while, about the first 8 weeks of the season, he kind of underdelivered, didn't really get the usage we thought he should, considering Mark Ingram can barely run, and that's one thing J.K. Dobbins is really good at. But once it hit week 9 and on, he went on an absolute tear. He got at least 10 carries per game in all but 1 week, and finishes the RB21 overall, the RB30 in points per game. If you look at his numbers, though, from week 8 to 17, he was the RB9, but the RB16 in points per game, so there was a pretty significant drop-off there. His total stat line was 134 carries for 805 yards and 9 touchdowns, and 24 targets for 18 receptions and 120 yards. I usually provide finish, but I think for J.K. Dobbins' case, it's unique enough to where the stats do kind of really matter. You see that killer efficiency with a 6.0 yard per carry, which is absolutely nuts. You also see the 9 rushing touchdowns, which in pretty much only 10 or so full games is absolutely incredible. But you also see the downside and what kind of locks him into being in this realm of running back, with the 24 targets and only 18 receptions without a single receiving touchdown. Dobbins, as you can see from the yard per carry, was incredibly efficient, but those targets are bringing him back, and that is the main issue. The Ravens' offense, especially under Greg Roman, is notorious for a lack of passing to the running backs, and that was true as they had the second lowest RB target number out of anybody in the entire league at 62, and 12 of those were to Patrick Ricard, who is a fullback. Why they dedicate him a dozen targets a year, I honestly don't know, but he got them, and they weren't really going to running backs. I guess they just don't have a fullback target section for obvious reasons. Additionally, from weeks 8 to 16 or 17, I just kept it at 16 because that's what's really pertinent for fantasy players. When Dobbins broke out, quote unquote, Gus Edwards still had 89 touches, 80 carries, and 9 receptions for an average of 9.9 or 10 a game. Let's say it's 10. He's going to be a real part of this backfield. He just got extended. This is always going to be a bit of a weird committee. They drafted Dobbins highly. He's incredibly talented, that is true. But they also like to have a second or possibly even third back. And in this case, it's Gus Edwards. I doubt we see much from Justice Hill, but Gus Edwards isn't really a problem as much. He's a problem, let's be honest. He's not a major problem, but he's there. He'll be a thorn in the side of J.K. Dobbins owners who want him to hit a higher carry and touch share that I just don't think he will with Edwards in this backfield. Lamar Jackson also takes a good portion of his carries. He took 159 out of the team's total 555 for around 29%, and Gus Edwards over the full year took around 26% of the carries, 144. Right there you go in two players. That is 55% of this team's carry share. And even if you say Dobbins gets a bump up to around all those carries, it's not great. He's not making up the majority of his backfield share. And while they rush it at an exceptionally high level, carries aren't that valuable compared to targets. I think targets are worth 2.6 times as much as a carry, and he's simply just not getting those. He had the second lowest target total out of anybody in the top 24 for running backs. Nick Chubb had 18, but he also didn't play in 4 games. So, not great, not really feeling that. Long story short, it's not going to be this backfield domination, this touch domination like we probably need for Dobbins to cash in on that top 8 upside overall. But it's been kind of doom and gloom, kind of shitting on his parade, pissing in his Cheerios. He's not going to get the touches. He won't get the targets. He's not going to be the focal point of the rushing offense. That's still Lamar. There are some really good things going for J.K. Dobbins. First off, he's incredibly talented. He's got home run potential, super explosive, super efficient on the ground. The Ravens led the league in rush attempts, although, as I said, those are split kind of equally. They were 7th in points per game, so the touchdown upside is going to remain there, especially for a home run hitter like Dobbins, who can take any carry 40 yards to the crib. He also got a decent amount of red zone carries with 25, but that was tied with Gus Edwards and less than Lamar's 30. So yet again, we see Dobbins performing, but he is held back by the way this offense is set up to benefit everybody involved. And as I've said, this offense will funnel through the run game. But unlike our last player, Antonio Gibson, there is a comparison for J.K. Dobbins. Mark Ingram in the same offense finished as the RB8 in 2019 with around 200 carries and 29 targets. It is possible to succeed. It's just going to be really difficult. Do I think J.K. Dobbins sees 40 to 50 more carries than Lamar? It's possible, but I don't know. There's a very good chance that he's capped off at around 180. And when you're not getting overwhelming amounts of targets to supplement that, like an Alvin Kamara, who finishes in that 150 range, it's kind of difficult to perform. He's going to give you an excellent floor, I believe, just due to his efficiency and touchdown upside. But usage, I think, is going to be a little bit lower than people expect, and a worse passing game usage than Josh Jacobs, who had double his targets. I just think it limits him, and it kind of takes him out of discussion for being able to finish in the top 6, top 8 almost. He will be a strong RB2 for you every week, with the upside to be an RB1 week to week, but he's not someone I necessarily want to bank on as my RB1 due to that limited upside we see. Real quick, just want to throw in, if you're enjoying the video so far, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Plenty of fantasy content coming over the next few months. Going to be super busy, have more time to dedicate to this, going to have a routine, so we will be back in action, full force, trying to help you win those chips. Back to your regularly scheduled program. Coming in at the RB15, a man who I have a lot less to say than the last two, we have Chris Carson. Last year he finished as the RB17. In only 12 games was the RB13 in points per game. He saw around 16 total opportunities per game, 12 carries and 4 targets. He actually has kind of technically increased in targets each year he's been in the league. He had one less than last year, but he played 3 less games. So if you think about the pace, it would have been faster. Let him have it. That's one issue with Chris Carson. That's the glaring issue. He's never going to give you a full season. It's like the Dalvin Cook effect with a lot less elite production. He's going to miss 1 or 2 for you. And you're just going to have to kind of accept that your RB2 is probably not going to be able to give you every game if you would like that. In 2019, though, with 15 games, he was the RB11, and in 2018, with 14 games, he was the RB15. So even when he misses a few games, he kind of finishes in that low-end RB1, high-end RB2 discussion pretty much every year. The problem is the Seahawks offense is always a tale of two halves, where one part of the season is the passing offense taking over, Carson getting involved in the receiving game. I think he ran like a wheel route. It was a beautiful catch. That's what you like to see, that first half of the season. And the other half is a complete stagnation. And a focus on the running game, and the passing game completely shuts down, becomes anemic. And everyone's like, is Russell Wilson really that good at football? And why does Pete Carroll still have a job? And then we start over next season. We do this whole thing again because we're sick and we enjoy it. Their offensive line is also kind of brutal. He did have the 8th ranked rushing efficiency, though, in terms of blocking, which is interesting. Maybe it's just their passing that's kind of brutal for the offensive line, their pass pro. So I guess for Chris Carson, they suffice just enough. But them losing Schottenheimer as their OC could cause this offense to be more explosive and dynamic, something they failed to really put together over the course of a full season. His workload likely isn't in question, however, on the ground, because Pete Carroll, one way or another, whether he's on his own one or the other team is one, he's going to run the ball only on his one. Let me take that back. Not much is going to change for Chris Carson year over year. Honestly, I feel like there's not much to say. We all kind of know what we're going to expect. He's going to give you like 14 games of solid production. He'll give you the occasional top 8 week. He'll probably miss you 2 games, and you're going to live with it. We're all going to draft Chris Carson and kind of wish he could do more because the offense holds him back. Hopefully this is the year it doesn't, but I'm not going to start getting excited now. The RB16 for me this year, who may or may not be the biggest disappointment in fantasy football last year, who wasn't just completely murdered by injury right away. Let me make the disclaimer. We have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Man, I don't know how much is his fault, because this is really on us for hyping him up as the second coming of Christ last year. I mean, 2 of the letters are in his abbreviation. I don't see why we couldn't do that. He was coming off the board as the RB7, the 9th overall pick, and then it just completely fell apart. He underperformed for the majority of the season except for week 1, where he tore up the famed Houston Texans run defense for 25 carries and 138 yards and a touchdown. That was it. The victory lapping after Clyde Edwards-Helaire week 1 was something to behold. We might not ever see it again. And that's where the lapping stopped, because Clyde quickly fell off the track, went home, and decided to do nothing for the other 15 weeks of the season. He overall finished with just about 11, I think it was exactly 1,100 yards from scrimmage, which honestly people are saying is impressive. It's really not. A lot of running backs hit 1,100 yards from scrimmage at this point when they're so involved as receivers, but that's besides the point. That was in 13 games. He finishes the RB22 overall, 23rd in points per game, and he didn't look great. The big thing I remember as someone who traded for him was that he was horrifically inefficient on the goal line. He was 23rd in attempts inside the 20 and scored 1 touchdown on 15 carries inside the 10. That's not good. That's really not good. Considering touchdowns are like worth the most points, you kind of need to score them, and it's not good when you can't. However, there was a slighter bright spot. He was averaging 14.1 points per game through the first 6 weeks, so he was actually the RB18 before shit hit the fan completely. He got hurt. They brought in Le'Veon Bell. I mean, if Le'Veon Bell's taking touches from you at this point in his career, something really can't be going well. Like, it was just a catastrophe. His season was a lost cause after week 6. If we would have pretended that he was just the RB18, maybe he would feel a little bit better, but we can't do that. As with Dobbins, though, after shitting on him for about 2 minutes, there are some positives. The Chiefs just completely juiced up their O-line with what may or may not be the corpse of Kyle Long, Joe Thuney, and Orlando Brown. And the Chiefs are one of the best offenses in football. They were 13th in RB targets overall last year. And there was plenty of high praise for Clyde coming last year from Andy Reid. He got comped to LaShawn McCoy, specifically Brian Westbrook was another one. And they did intend on giving him 3-down back usage. They thought he could handle that workload. And despite his inability to do it, they gave him plenty of touches inside the red zone to prove that he could be a goal line back. Mixed success rate, but they gave him the touches at least. It wasn't horrific. Back to another red flag, though. Mahomes really isn't going to check down much, but he does have more potential overall to get more usage over a full season, another year in the Andy Reid system with a full training camp. I'm expecting a bounce back, not by a ton. I think he's still a mid RB2 who can occasionally give you that RB1 week. That's what a lot of these guys in these tiers are. Gibson was kind of in the tier of his own, maybe with the guys ahead of him as a guy who has like legit RB, like top 6 upside. These guys I think are more weekly RB2s who can give you that occasional RB1 type of week. He hopefully sees more goal line efficiency. I don't know if he will. I'm not sure if there's a predictor on that. I'm not sure how sticky that stat is. It would be nice if he improved, but I don't know. It would be nice if we all got better at things. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire slots in nicely as my RB16. Joe Mixon is my RB17, and I do not want to talk about him one bit. I'm ready to be hurt by him again, but I'm not going to draft him. I don't think you could pay me to draft this fucker again. It is miserable. I'm aware of the trauma and anger I have towards this man, reading this blurb, writing the blurb I have made. I do not care. This is a bitter entry, and I do not want to talk about Joe Mixon. He's so beyond frustrating to own. Last year, up to week 6 before he got hurt, and then was week to week for 4 months, he was the RB9 with a nice 14.9 points per game. Pretty solid number, except when you actually look at his numbers. He was the RB47, the RB27, the RB33, the RB1, the RB23, and the RB8. So 1 week it was literally as good as you can get, another good week, and then 4 weeks where he was absolutely fucking useless. You couldn't do anything. And if you're like me and you drafted a guy in the second round and he proceeded to finish at 47, 27, and 33 the first 3 weeks, you don't play him that 4th week. You say the leash is cut, I gave you 3 games, and then he does that, and then you start him again, and then he sucks, and then you bench him, then he's good again. It's miserable. The only 2 decent things about Joe Mixon are that he's good at football, and he got good opportunity. He had 119 carries and 21 receptions, so 140 touches through 6 weeks. That's actually really good. It's a pace of 373 touches over a full season, which is absolutely incredible. Joe Burrow looks like he's recovering, albeit slower than we expected, but he should be back to full strength at some point during the season. The opportunity, I know last episode I said Najee Harris, or 2 episodes ago, not last episode. When you get that type of volume, you're guaranteed pretty much to be top 12 with the lowest you can be, being in this RB17 range. I have no faith in Joe Mixon to do well. The dude is like super inefficient. We keep hearing that he's getting more targets. I don't know where they're coming from. I don't know if he's ever going to get them. Supposedly they would never want him to leave the field. I kind of do, just so I don't have to ever fucking worry about playing him again. But unfortunately, he's going to be playing. This team has no real offensive line. Zach Taylor is a horrific coach, but at least he's played 14 games throughout the 4 years and has a lot of touches potentially. He has been a top 12 running back for 2 out of the past 3 years, although he was the RB17 in points per game in 2019. So by necessity, he has to be this is his floor, like 17, maybe RB16. He's in a tier with Clyde and a few other guys. He has to be here. The talent is there. You'd think the opportunity would be there, but he is just so frustrating. It is impossible to own Joe Mixon. You're gonna draft him in the 2nd or 3rd round because no one wants to do it, and you're like, oh, it's a value. I should draft Joe Mixon. He'll get 25 touches a week. He'll barely do anything with them most weeks. He's gonna blow. He's gonna lose you some weeks because your 3rd round pick put up 4 fucking points for the 5th week in a row. And then when you bench him, he's gonna put up points, and then he's going to suck again. He'll give you 4 good weeks a year. It's honestly like the running back equivalent of Tyler Lockett, except it's a scarcer position and they're more expensive. I cannot stand Joe Mixon, but by sheer necessity, he is my RB17, although I do not want to draft him at all unless someone's covering my league due to do so. Wrapping up my list with the player who I initially had much higher than this in my projected rankings, David Montgomery. He's been kind of a pain in the ass to rank this year. Last year, if you watched my content then, shout out if you did, I told everyone to trade him at the deadline because he was coming into an easy schedule, but he sucked, he wasn't good, and the easy schedule was a great way to sell people on David Montgomery. That didn't go so well, now did it? He went on an absolute tear and finished as the RB4 overall in the year. 301 total touches, around 1,500 scrimmage yards, 10 total touchdowns. From weeks 1 to 9, he was the RB14, so I looked a lot better. But then, from weeks 10 to 16, he was the RB5, so it looked a lot worse. There are some red flags people have regarding David Montgomery, but I'm not feeling most of them. I feel like a lot of them are kind of lazy. Tariq Cohen and Damian Williams aren't going to steal touches. Cohen said he's feeling stiff in his knee, and it's more week to week than day to day. And if we're at this point in the offseason, the coach is like, this guy looks great, he's in the best shape he's ever been in, there's legitimate reason to be concerned. And Damian Williams is 29, coming off of a year where he didn't play. That guy's barely going to be a threat, even if he is getting receiving work in practice. You know who else is getting receiving work in practice? N'Keal Harry, and he sucks. So don't listen to them. Their offensive line is more or less the same. Kyle Long was retired before this. I didn't really lose him. They added a Mauler in the run game and Tevin Jenkins, which if anything is a nice upgrade over Charles Leno Jr., I believe was their tackle. And Justin Fields or Andy Dalton can both rely on him if need be. And he had an easy schedule at the end of the year, which he did. Like, there's no denying it. The teams he played were cupcakes, but he's going to play some of those teams again. And what do you want him to do? Suck? Derrick Henry plays in the AFC South and gets 4 cakewalks a year with the Jaguars and Texans, and you don't see anybody bitching about him, so let the guy have a easy schedule. If he produces, he produces. My major concern, though, is something that I feel like a lot of people are just kind of tuning out or not really looking at. And it's that Matt Nagy is going to be calling plays again for this team. From weeks 10 to 17 last year, the big change wasn't that David Montgomery got good at football or that the schedule was super easy, although I'm sure that helped. It's that Bill Lazor was put in charge to call the plays, and the Bears' offense was more of a collaborative effort than Matt Nagy rubbing 2 spoons together trying to create fire. That was also the exact time period the offense kicked up, and so did Montgomery. Dating back to 2019, where Matt Nagy called plays the whole year, Monty was the RB25 with 9.9 points per game. It was his rookie year, so I'll cut him some slack, but that's really unimpressive. He only started 8 games, but his total touch count actually outweighed his starting count. He had 135 touches in games where he didn't start, 131 in games where he did, so it was basically dead even. He put up 9.9 points per game with almost 270 touches. That's pathetic. So if you take those 16 games from 2019 and the 6 from this year, he averages 10.15 points per game when Matt Nagy calls the plays. I repeat, David Montgomery averages 10 points a game when Matt Nagy calls plays for the Chicago Bears offense. That would have made him the RB31 this year in points per game. There is no way to describe how bad that is for a guy who's coming off the board in the 3rd round. And I know people are riding the high of last year, and they're like, man, he turned the corner. He didn't turn shit. Matt Nagy just took his own head out of his ass for once and let someone smarter call the plays, and then he was like, nah, that makes me look bad. I'm Matt Nagy. We're going to do it my way. And his way absolutely crippled David Montgomery's fantasy value. He's back this year in full force, and it's honestly a nightmare because part of me thinks that he can still perform well. He's going to be getting so many touches that it's almost impossible for him to not be at least 18th. But God, Matt Nagy might single-handedly ruin his year as a play caller, and we're going to have to be ready for that. If the headline comes out, though, like week 3, week 4, and David Montgomery started slow, but we see that someone else is taking over play calling, 100%. Trade for a candidate, David Montgomery. When it's not Matt Nagy, he's a beast. The problem is it's Matt Nagy, and I have to rank him here out of almost obligation. You're getting so many touches, you just have to be here. But the most unenthusiastic RB18 ever is David Montgomery. So running back one time, my RB13, Antonio Gibson, RB14, J.K. Dobbins, RB 15, Chris Carson. RB16, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. RB17, Joe Mixon. And RB18, David Montgomery. That's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed. The final part should be coming out tomorrow. It will be 19 through 24. That'll be the end of my rankings. But I will be giving you more options when it comes to in-season stuff, and when the playoffs will probably bump to 30. That's going to be it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, comment, and subscribe, and peace out.